guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 301st episode of my series, where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it has, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So to kick off this set of 80s and very early 90s releases, today we have the revolutionary X-Clan, an innovative crew that was absolutely essential to the golden age Afrocentric movement, as one of the many acts that fell under the grand umbrella of Zulu Nation affiliates, with some of the more notable names including the numerous artists that made up the famed Native Tongues collective, like A Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers, De La Soul, Queen Latifah, Black Sheep, and Brand Nubian, as well as other pretty forward-thinking East Coast artists like Public Enemy or KRS-One. But you can't discuss the Zulu Nation without mentioning Africa Bambaataa, and while unfortunately certain legends have apparently decided it's okay to stay silent and or give the dude a pass because he's a legend, I personally don't think I can bring him up without mentioning the fact that he's on the other end of some very severe child sexual abuse allegations. I also have to shout out Immortal Technique, because as I remember while this was first breaking the internet a few years back, he specifically stood against BAM and the legends who were ignoring it, or in some cases even defending it, and the fact that he stood with the victims and even personally discussed the situation with some of them, making sure to get their full sides of the story out there, really goes to show what type of individual Immortal Technique is, and I think it's the epitome of what being a leader is all about. It means standing up for what you know is right, even when it might not be the most business-savvy decision. In some cases, you know it will directly affect your relationships or even your bottom line, but it's those moments when the chips are down where you actually show your true colors. I mean, I love KRS-One and his music just like any other hip-hop head, and of course his contributions to the culture are undeniable. That's why I've covered him a good 3 times on the channel already. But I do have to admit that if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, I haven't been able to look at KRS and some of the other Zulu Nation affiliates that stood by this pretty awful person the same as I did before. I'm gonna move away from that grim subject matter now, since for all intents and purposes it really isn't too relevant when it comes to the album I'm focusing on. I just thought it was worth giving its own little detour, since X-Clan is so often viewed as an extension of that scene, and I believe certain members may have even been involved in some of these allegations. However, in fairness to this group and their background, you can definitely see a separation between the peaceful, love, and unity-filled identity that the Native Tongues define themselves with, and the more militant, uncompromising Black Watch movement that these guys were active participants in. X-Clan had a couple meh return albums in the late 2000s, with Return from Mecca and Mainstream Outlaws, but the real crown jewels of their discography comes in the form of their first 2 albums, one of which we are covering today, their 1990 debut, To the East Blackwards, which would then be followed up by 1992's Exodus, The New Testament. There's a huge roster of members and close affiliates that X-Clan has rotated through over the years, with the most well-known member definitely being Grand Verbalizer Funkin' Lesson Brother J, probably better known as simply Brother J, who was sort of given a big alley-oop from late legend and personal favorite of mine, Sean Price, of Helta Skelta and Boot Camp Click, who in an interview when asked to give his top 5 favorite MCs from Brooklyn, New York, actually named Brother J amongst the likes of Biggie and Ho, which was the first time me and a number of other relatively younger fans had been introduced to J or X-Clan in general. As amazing as his presence and command on the mic is, of course he was nowhere near the only person in this collective. Some of the other core original members included Paradise the Architect, along with Professor X the Overseer and Sugar Shap the Rhythm Provider, who unfortunately have all passed away. But there were some other affiliates that appeared alongside the updated roster, when the crew kind of saw its second incarnation during the short-lived revival that I briefly brought up earlier, including Master China, Kumu, Ultraman, ACL, Lord Za, DJ Fat Jack, Zulu, ISIS, Queen Mother Rage, and YZ. When it came to the early days of this collective, however, The rapping was pretty much completely carried by Brother J, who unfortunately never had much in the way of a solo discography. However, he did actually form another group after X-Clan first disbanded, called Dark Sun Riders, whose first and only project would come in the form of 1996's Seeds of Evolution. The lyrics often incorporate historical and societal commentary, mixed with the zany, outer space themes that proliferated the Zulu nation throughout the 80s. And I actually wanted to share a small chunk from one of Brother J's verses on here. Coming off the iconic opening track, Funkin' Lesson, he displays a skilled, steady pen that was honestly light years ahead of what your average rapper was even attempting back in 1990, kicking it off with Abracadabra, a la baby, Professor, all hail Funkin' Lesson, sweet tongue, grand writer of scrolls, now behold, let the legend unfold. Born in a cosmos with no space and time to exist, vibe in the midst of the chaos. Mortals label me as illogical, mythological. They couldn't comprehend when I brought the word, a stick called verb, a black steel nerve, teaching those actors and actresses who write a couple of lines on what black is, really? Then they label me a sin, when a brother just speaks what's within. I guess I'm blacker than the shadow in the darkest alley, that they're always scared to go in, boo. I wear boots and beads, bags and braids, stick and scrolls, rings and shades, walk in the light of the moon, but I've never seen a Batman. African call it black man. Brother extracts your African steps and your movements. Enhance for improvements. Grand Funk, a new home for the phrase. Funkin' Lesson, the pathway. We don't get any featured artists or guest appearances on To the East Blackwards, and there were a few names involved when it comes to the progressive instrumentals here, but it was pretty much all in-house personnel like Brother J, Professor X the Overseer, Paradise the Architect, and Anthony Harden. I'm gonna leave out Funkin' Lesson for my honorable mentions and favorites since I focused in on that track specifically already, and instead recommend songs like Grand Verbalizer, What Time Is It, Tribal Jam, A Day of Outrage, Operation Snatchback, Earthbound, Raise the Flag, and In the Ways of the Scales. But then for my overall top 3 on this one, I'd have to go with Verbal Milk, Verbs of Power, and Heed the Word of the Brother. Thank you for watching my 301st video. Next up, we have another political, forward-thinking LP that came out this same year. So look for that one, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite moments are off this Afrocentric groundbreaker. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.